The NFL trade deadline is just around the corner. It is Tuesday, November 4th. What trades are going to go down? What teams need specific positions to try to...
Still has enough left this season and even next season to give you what you're looking for at the running back.
On November 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, that's when the NFL trade deadline slams shut and front offices either go all in on a championship run or wave the white flag on their season. And let me tell you, 2025 is shaping up to be one of the wildest deadlines we've seen in years. We've got Pro Bowl wide receivers on the block, veteran quarterbacks looking for new homes, pass rushers who could flip the playoff picture, and stick around because we're going to talk about this later. One team that might be about to blow it up in a way that we haven't seen in the NFC South in a decade. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down every major trade rumor floating around the league right now, who's available, who's buying, who's selling, and most importantly, where these guys could potentially end up. So real quick before we get to this video is sponsored. PrizePicks is blessing us with another free square, and you guys know I'm practically perfect on these. All Steph Curry needs is 1 point for his square to cash. So to take advantage of this promo, first sign up for PrizePicks using my promo code Mikerophone and get $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And then tail these picks for Sunday. I have Mason Taylor getting at least 25 receiving yards, Caleb Williams and Daniel Jones each getting 200 pass yards, and Dak getting 225 pass yards. I'm trying to turn $50 into $130, but you can also pair these with Steph Curry to boost your multiplier. I already used my Steph Curry free square for my NBA picks as you see on screen. I give away additional picks on Instagram, but I also partner with Fantasy Aces, who's been profiting on a daily basis in the NBA, NFL, college football, and MLB. The link to that is the WAP link in the description down below, and thank you PrizePicks for sponsoring today's upload. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Let's set the stage here real quick. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, we're looking at one of the most active trade deadlines in recent history. Over the past 6 years, October has averaged just under 15 trades leading up to the deadline. This year, we've already seen 7 deals go down, and we're not even at Halloween yet. The Browns and Bengals made their first trade in franchise history. You heard that right, their first ever trade together, when Cleveland shipped Joe Flacco to Cincinnati. And Mike Tomlin had an interesting take on that.
You know, to be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feeling.
So that's not his only division rival that made a huge trade. The Ravens moved Odafe Owe to the Chargers. The Jaguars and Browns swapped starting cornerbacks. Things are already cooking. And here's why this year is different. We've got more teams in the "we have no idea where we are" category than usual. The Titans just fired Brian Callahan 6 games into year 2. The Dolphins are 1-5 with Tua calling out his own teammates in the locker room.
I think it starts with the leadership in helping articulate that for the guys, and then what we're expecting out of the guys, right? We're expecting this. Are we getting that? Are we not getting that? We have guys showing up to player-only meetings late, guys not showing up to player-only meetings. There's a lot that goes into that.
And walking back those statements just a few days later.
The leader of this team, the comments that had been said, I would say I've made a mistake, and I'm owning up to that right now. Talk to guys on the team about it, talk to the leaders about it. They know my heart, they know the intent was right, but no matter the intent, things get misconstrued or however the media wants to portray it, that leaves a void of silence and a lot of questions for the guys on our team. Now, being 1-5, you know, we talk a lot about, all right, we got to get this going. We got to get this going. Come in excited to go to work, forget about the noise. And I feel like I just added onto that for our guys. I felt like I let the emotions of the game get to me after the game. You know, that's something that I can learn from as a leader on this team. None of that should have gotten out. And so want to publicly apologize about that.
The Saints are in full-blown tank mode at 1-5. The Ravens, who everyone picked to win the AFC North, are somehow 1-5 and might need to hit the reset button. On the flip side, you've got the Lions sitting pretty at 5-1. The Bucks with Baker Mayfield playing out of his mind in an MVP campaign. And the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they started slow, still being the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. These contenders are going to be aggressive, and the bottom feeders know it. So buckle up, because we're going to go team by team, player by player, and figure out where all these pieces are going to land. Let's start with the team that might have the most intriguing intriguing trade chips on the board, the New Orleans Saints. They're 1-5. They just basically handed the keys to Spencer Rattler, and according to multiple reports, they're fielding calls on basically everyone. The crown jewel of their potential fire sale is wide receiver Chris Olave. The Giants are apparently big game hunting at wide receiver and have shown interest in both Chris Olave and Jalen Waddle. But let's focus on Olave first, because this dude is legitimately one of the best young receivers in football if the New Orleans Saints don't get him killed out there. Most of you guys may know Chris Olave as being the #1 victim in NFL history to the hospital ball, and if you don't know what I'm talking about,
Dalton throws, looking for Olave. Instead, he says, how about a touchdown? Clark throws high to Olave. He took a hit.
But apart from that, Chris Olave is 25 years old. He's logged 2 1,000-yard seasons already in his young career. And through 6 games this year, he's already caught 39 passes for 342 yards and a touchdown, despite playing with Spencer Rattler on a team that's constantly playing from behind. The Saints are going to get interest from half the league on this guy. Here's the thing though, Olave is going into the final year of his rookie contract in 2026, where he'll make $15.493 million on his 5th-year option. Then he's a free agent. So if you're the Saints, you're looking at this and thinking, do we really want to pay this guy $20 to $25 million a year while we're rebuilding? Or do we cash in now and get some draft capital? For a team like the New York Giants with Jackson Dart at quarterback trying to establish an identity, Olave makes perfect sense. Dart's in his rookie year came from Ole Miss where he could sling it, and pairing it with a proven wide receiver like Olave after Malik Neighbors went down for the season could absolutely accelerate his development. The Giants have cap space, they have draft picks, they're 3-3 right now in a wide open NFC East, and they're for real. They just beat the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. But here's the curveball. What if a contender swoops in? The Buffalo Bills are always in the market for playmakers. The San Francisco 49ers could desperately use a wide receiver, even though Kendrick Bourne is looking really good for them. The Kansas City Chiefs have needed receiver help all season long, but they're about to get Rashee Rice back. Olave's value on the trade market is going to be at least a 2nd-round pick, maybe even more. But he's not the only person that could potentially get moved in New Orleans. Now let's talk about the other big name in New Orleans, Alvin Kamara. This one's trickier. Kamara is 30 years old, a 5-time Pro Bowler, but here's the reality check. He hasn't made a Pro Bowl since 2021, and the stats paint a pretty clear picture of decline. According to advanced metrics, Kamara has negative 55 rushing yards over expected this season, which is the 3rd worst among full-time running backs. His receiving production has fallen off of a cliff. He's gone from 38.8 receiving yards per game in his prime to just 20.3 this year. Is that because Spencer Rattler is slinging it downfield more? Maybe. Or is it because father time is catching up to a running back who's taken an absolute beating over 8 NFL seasons? Here's where it gets tricky. Do you guys remember when the Chiefs traded for Kadarius Toney and he helped them win the Super Bowl? I know, it sounds bizarre, but yes, that actually happened once upon a time in the NFL. What I'm trying to say is Kansas City knows the value of adding that one piece at the deadline. And right now they're struggling in the run game. Kamara to the Chiefs has been floated around as a real possibility, and Andy Reid could absolutely scheme up ways to get Kamara the ball in space. And Patrick Mahomes throwing to Travis Kelce with Kamara out of the backfield, that's a nightmare for defenses. The Saints aren't gonna get a 1st rounder for Kamara, those days are over, but a 3rd or 4th round pick, that's realistic. And for a team in rebuild mode with just 5 picks in the 2026 draft, every pick matters. Don't sleep on Rashid Shaheed either. He's gonna be an unrestricted free agent in March, and with how the receiver market has exploded, this man is going to get paid. The Saints might not be able to afford him, so teams are definitely calling about him too. Now let's head up to Ohio, where things are getting really weird in Cincinnati. The Bengals are in this strange limbo where they're not quite out of it yet, but they're not playing like a team that's going anywhere. They traded for Joe Flacco to try and stabilize things while we figure out what's up with their quarterback situation, but their biggest trade chip might be on their defense. Trey Hendrickson has been one of the most interesting cases over the past 2 years for the Cincinnati Bengals. This dude has asked for a trade in the offseason. The Bengals said no. They gave him a revised 1-year, $29 million deal instead of the extension that he wanted, and now here we are. According to the Athletics report, Cincinnati wanted a 2026 1st-round pick and a young defensive player for him back in August. They are certainly not getting that now, but they might have to consider moving him anyway. Here's the thing, Hendrickson is 31 years old. He's on a one-year deal, and he's almost definitely not re-signing with Cincinnati after how the offseason went. He's on pace for 11 sacks this season, even though his pressure rate has dropped off a bit over the last 3 weeks. But you put him on a better defensive line where he's not seeing constant double teams, and he could absolutely be that guy who puts a contender over the top. The San Francisco 49ers are being mentioned as an ideal fit, and that makes a ton of sense. San Francisco just lost Nick Bosa for the season with a torn ACL. Fred Warner went down with a brutal ankle injury against the Bucs. Their defense is getting decimated by injuries, and they're going to need reinforcements if they want to make a run. Putting Hendrickson opposite of whoever they plug in on the other side could work. But here's my question. If you're the Bengals and you're sitting here at, let's say, 2-5 or 3-4 at the deadline, do you really blow it up? Or do you hold on to Hendrickson, hope you can make a run, and then just let him walk in free agency? Because moving him is basically admitting the season's over. And I'm not sure they're ready to do that yet, especially if they just traded for Flacco to try to hold the fort down before Joe Burrow comes back. Alright, we gotta talk about the Miami Dolphins because this is a bona fide show. The Dolphins are 1-5. Tua just apologized for calling out teammates for missing meetings. Mike McDaniel might be on the hot seat, and according to reports, teams are already circling looking at their roster like vultures. The two names everyone's talking about are edge rushers Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. Chubb is 29 years old, still playing at a high level with 4 sacks through 6 games, and he's only making $2.5 million this year before his contract jumps up. Phillips is a pending free agent with a streakier resume, but at 27 years old, he's got upside. Here's what one report said. Teams are already eyeing both Phillips and Chubb, as the Dolphins stare at the trade deadline as a clearance sale. That's brutal. That's basically a front office saying, we know what this is. If I'm a contender that needs pass rush help, let's say the Dallas Cowboys, who are getting torched on defense, or the Buffalo Bills, who could always use more edge depth, I'm calling Miami today. Now, I doubt the Miami Dolphins are going to want to help their division rival, but Chubb especially makes sense because his contract is so team friendly this year. You could rent him for half the season, see what you've got, and then decide if you want to pay him long term. The Dolphins giving up on this season would be pretty stunning considering that they gave Tua that massive extension, but sometimes you just gotta read the tea leaves. When your franchise quarterback is publicly airing out locker room drama and you're 1-5 with one of the worst point differentials in football, maybe it's time to think about 2026. Now let's get into the quarterbacks because this is where things could get really spicy. We've got multiple veteran QBs whose names are floating around, and any of these moves could completely shift a team's trajectory. Let's start with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. The Falcons gave him a 4-year, $150 million contract before 2024, then turned around and drafted Michael Penix Jr. in the first round. Kirk Cousins is currently 37 years old, Atlanta is 3-3 and not really going anywhere, and only $10 million of his remaining contract is guaranteed after this year. Here's the play. What if the Falcons just rip the band-aid off? Move to a team that needs a QB, eat some of the salary, collect a draft pick, and hand the offense to Penix to see what you've got. The problem is, where does Cousins go? The Browns are rolling with 2 rookie QBs after trading Flacco. The Giants have Jackson Dart. The Titans just drafted Cam Ward. Actually, the only team that could potentially make sense here is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got Aaron Rodgers looking way better in year 2 after his Achilles injury, but he's also 41 years old. If something happens to Rodgers, do the Steelers feel good about their backup situation? Cousins as insurance for a contender makes sense, even if it's just as the league's most expensive clipboard holder. The more likely scenario, though, is Cousins stays put this year, and Atlanta makes a decision on him next offseason when they can cut him without destroying their cap. Now, here's one that's actually realistic. The Giants moving Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. Wilson had one bizarrely incredible performance against the Dallas Cowboys in week 2 before being benched in week 4. Jameis hasn't played a snap all season long. Honestly, I think Jameis is just there for the vibes.
7-yard touchdown connection right there.
Oh no. Eat that dog.
To the wall!
We live in Oklahoma.
You courageous, my man.
The Giants are currently 3-3 with Jackson Dart under center, and they've got 2 veteran mentors basically collecting paychecks. With Brian Dable and Joe Shane potentially on the hot seat, would they do their prospective replacements a favor and trade one of these guys for a draft pick, maybe get some future assets back? The thing is, who wants a 36-year-old Russell Wilson at this point? He's making $1.2 million this year as a backup, and that's nothing. But what team is desperate enough for QB help to give up assets for a guy who might be washed? Maybe Cincinnati if things go completely completely sideways? I don't know. This one feels like a stretch. Jameis is more interesting because we've seen him have success as a starter before, even if it comes with a trademark 30 interceptions. A team that loses their starting QB to injury before the deadline might take a flyer on Jameis. But as of right now, I'd bet that both of these guys stay in New York. Now, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room in regards to one major contender this year, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are currently 1-5. Let me say that again. The Baltimore Ravens, with an MVP candidate as their quarterback, are 1-5. They're 4.5 games behind Pittsburgh in the AFC North, and there's legitimate talk that they might need to make some tough decisions. The big name here is Mark Andrews. He's 30 years old, playing out the final year of a 4-year, $56 million extension, and Isaiah Likely is already waiting in the wings as the future at tight end. Andrews' yards per route have declined each of the last 3 years. He's still productive, don't get me wrong, but he's not the dominant force he was a few years ago. Here's the scenario. If Baltimore looks at their schedule and realizes they're not making the playoffs, do they trade Andrews to a contender for a 3rd or 4th round pick, get something for him before he walks in free agency? The Commanders are mentioned as a potential fit, and that makes sense. Jaden Daniel had an incredible rookie year, and pairing him with an experienced tight end like Mark Andrews alongside Zach Ertz would give Washington another major weapon in their playoff push. But I'll be honest, I think trading Andrews would be giving up on Lamar Jackson, and I don't see Baltimore doing that. They already traded Odafe Owe, so they've dipped their toe in the water, but moving Jackson's security blanket feels like a bridge too far. Now, let me rapid fire on some other names that are floating around because there's a lot of potential moves that aren't getting as much attention but could be just as impactful. The Raiders are reportedly willing to part ways with receiver Jacoby Myers. This one's interesting because Myers is actually a pretty solid receiver. He's reliable, runs good routes, and he's on a reasonable contract. For a team like the Chiefs or the Bills who desperately could use wide receiver help, Myers might not be the sexy name, but he'd give Josh Allen another trusted target. I could also see the Commanders kicking the tires on this one. On top of that, I'm thinking of some of the Cleveland Browns offensive linemen, Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. Cleveland already dealt Greg Newsome and Joe Flacco, so they're not afraid to move veterans. Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller are both former Pro Bowlers on the wrong side of 30. Both are pending free agents, and with Deshaun Watson on the hook for an $80 million cap hit next year, the Browns need to get younger and cheaper everywhere they can. The problem is they have 2 rookie quarterbacks that they need to protect. Trading away your best offensive lineman while you're trying to develop young QBs is a great way to ruin their careers. Still, if a contender comes calling with a good offer, I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland at least listened. This next one's very interesting. Kyle Duggar looked like a cornerstone safety for the Patriots after signing a $58 million extension in 2024, but he's played in only 36% of the defensive snaps under Mike Vrabel this year in a 4-2 start. Something's not right here. He signed through 2027, so New England could move him without destroying their cap, and a team that needs safety help might be willing to take on that contract. So what teams are the most willing to add pieces? Before I speculate as to the trades that are the most likely to happen, these are the teams that are most likely to swing a huge deal. The Detroit Lions are currently 5-1. They're rolling, and they know they've got a window here. If the Lions want to add a pass rusher or another receiver, they've got the draft capital to do it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have Baker Mayfield playing on a cheap contract and an MVP level. They're 5-1, and they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. The question is, do they add an offensive lineman after injuries have hit that unit, or do they go out and get another pass rusher to help the defense? The Kansas City Chiefs always make moves at the deadline. Whether it's Kamara at running back, Myers at receiver, or someone that we haven't thought of yet, the Chiefs will do something. The San Francisco 49ers have the easiest schedule in football, and they have a great record so far, but unfortunately, they're the most injured team in football. They need reinforcements. Trey Hendrickson makes a lot of sense here. So does adding another linebacker or safety to help the defense stay afloat. Finally, there's the Buffalo Bills. This team is always trying to get over the hump. If there's a receiver or edge rusher available that puts them over the top, they'll be aggressive. So here's what I think is the most likely to happen, and you could clip this and remind me in the future, especially if I happen to hit on these. I think Chris Olave gets traded to the Giants. This feels too perfect. The Giants need a true wide receiver one for Jackson Dart. They've got the draft capital, and the Saints need to rebuild. I'm saying a 2nd round pick gets it done. I think Jacoby Myers gets traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are not messing around. They need receiver help. Myers is affordable, and if the Raiders are selling, a 3rd round pick is a done deal. I think Bradley Chubb gets traded to the Dallas Cowboys. They've been getting torched on defense all season long. Jerry Jones doesn't like sitting still at the deadline, even though some of his deadline decisions are fairly questionable, and Chubb would immediately help help their pass rush. A 4th rounder plus a conditional pick gets it done here. Finally, I think the Giants either trade Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson. Maybe to the Bengals if things go south with Flacco. I think the 7th round pick is worth the insurance here. Here are some trades that I think probably won't happen but would absolutely be insane. Trey Hendrickson to the 49ers. I think the Bengals will hold on to him and roll the dice on the season, but if they're like 2-6 at the deadline, this could absolutely happen. Kirk Cousins getting moved is a little bit of a long shot because the Falcons would have to eat so much money that I just don't see it. But if they did, it would break the internet. And finally, Mark Andrews leaving Baltimore. This would signal a complete reset by the Ravens, and I don't think they're there yet. But if they lose the next 2 games and fall to 1-7, then maybe they will be. The trades that are definitely not happening are Alvin Kamara to the Chiefs. As much as this has been rumored, I think Kamara's value is too low and his contract's too high for Kansas City to pull the trigger. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about the upcoming trade deadline? Is there any player that I potentially missed that is very likely to be traded? I like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.